my talk about today is about how the Ministry of Education interacts with universities with respect to agreements and money allocation indicators, including the number of doctoral students. So Tapio seems to be joining us, which is a nice thing. Okay, here I have a small picture where we have a triangle of interactions between university strategy and the ministry's political objectives and the incentives and aspirations of the academic community. Each one of these three players have different ambitions and different objectives. But Finnish universities are autonomous actors, independent legal entities. But in spite of this, the Ministry of Education is our main financier, and they definitely steer and coordinate the university field very strongly. And I'll give a few words about the framework. Universities and the ministry negotiate with each other for a 4-year period, and they sign an agreement. And the negotiation process has been taking place for the last year, and starting from 2021, there will be a period of a new agreement, which is practically agreed upon. Now there are some minor issues still to be decided, but in the agreement there are sort of verbal arguments, but also degree targets, including the doctoral degree targets. Okay, and into the agreement is closely associated is the money allocation model by which the ministry allocates money for universities, their core funding. And most important part there is the teaching and research performance indicators, but also some other money basket as well. So the money allocated to the university is allocated as a single entity, even though it's comprised of several indicators, which I will show you in a minute. And the internal allocations by the universities, they can do that independently. There is no obligation for the universities to follow the ministry model. Our history has been that we follow the ministry model quite closely. And we have just recently accepted the model for money allocation for the next year and the next 4 years. Okay, I'll just remind that there are also other sources of money, the external funding, such as funding from the Academy of Finland, Business Finland, and foundations, and so on. Okay, but as a rule, money allocation models are upgraded as the agreement period changes. So the coming year is the changing point. Okay, the money allocation model looks like this. I will not go through this. Two most uppermost boxes are the indicators for education and research, and the lowermost third is the strategy development and national duty money baskets. The doctoral degrees is marked here with 8%, so that's the weight of this particular indicator in the money allocation model. In the old model, doctor's degrees percentage was 9%, so it's gone down with 1% unit. What that means, the 1% in the whole university system money is something like 1.5 million euro, but when it comes to university level, it's something like 150,000 euros. What is shown here as well are the unit prices for one doctoral degree. So we get from the ministry 78,000 euros per degree, and we allocate to faculties 45,000 euros per doctoral degree. Okay, and in the agreements we also have agreed on degree targets. For doctoral degrees, our target is 182 as a 3-year average, but this target figure also acts as a finance threshold. So if the 3-year average of our doctoral degrees exceeds this 182, we don't get any money of the degrees exceeding this level, or this sort of cutter limit. And in the agreement, there are also actions which support our strategy. University had an opportunity to choose its own core development fields and also indicators for follow-up. So we chose 4 core fields. One of them is learner-centered education for life's various circumstances. And for this core field, we defined 3 indicators, of which one is the number of doctoral degrees within target time. And the target time is, of course, 4 years. And we are starting from a percentage of 24. So 24% of our doctoral degrees are taken within the target time of 4 years. But our objective is should be 2024, should be 50%. So that's our sort of target level for doctoral degrees within target time in the end of this coming 4-year period. Okay, some words about the money allocation model within the university. In the ministry's model, which allocates money for universities, doctoral degrees appear as such, so there is no coefficients. There is the target cutter, but in the university model, we decided that there is also this target time coefficients in place. So as a consequence, we don't count actually doctoral degrees, we collect doctoral degree points. So these work like this. If you have a doctoral degree within the target time of 4 years, it has a coefficient 1.5. And if there is a degree over target time but less than 1 year, the coefficient is 1.4. And if there's a doctoral degree which is more than 1 year over the target time, so the coefficient 1. In that case, the doctoral degree is the same as the doctoral degree point. So these coefficients are exactly the same as in the ministry model and also university model for bachelor's and master's degrees. So we as a university, we wanted to have this sort of financial incentive for taking doctoral degrees in the target time. So this is a strong incentive for faculties to arrange the doctoral studies in such a way that this taking degrees in target time is possible. Okay, another point which is sort of related to this target time thing is that when Academy of Finland allocates research money, they demand mobility for young researchers when they apply for funding for academic research fellowships and also postdoctoral researchers, which is the career stage immediately after your doctoral degree. And in our agreement as well, it is mentioned that universities should promote mobility of graduated doctors. And within our university, there has been some discussion whether we should start a campaign to promote increased mobility, because if there is no mobility periods, these Academy of Finland positions are sort of out of reach. And in the university's money allocation model, the target time incentive, it actually has a dual purpose, not only taking degrees within target time, but also it works toward increased mobility, because the younger you are, the sooner you take your degree, the easier it is to go abroad for your postdoctoral career. The older you are when you take your degree, the more difficult it usually is to take a postdoctoral period. So smooth progresses of research-oriented training is a prerequisite for for increased mobility, and as a result, successful career development becomes more possible. So the two take-home messages here are that smooth progress of studies and research-oriented training is a prerequisite for having degrees in the target time, and increased international mobility after graduation leads to successful career development, and having your degrees in target time helps here. So thank you. These are the sort of main points which have to do with the negotiations with the ministry and the ministry's management of university field. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. I suppose you can see Aino's screen now. So there's one question in the chat. Maija is asking, is mobility, is it the same as two abroad, or do Finnish institutions count as mobility as well? And also whether should I have your numbers on the years and percentages? Okay.
I'm not very well aware how the Finnish Academy counts what is mobility, but I think it should be international mobility. I don't think they count movements within Finland, but that's just my guess. Somebody here might have a better idea of this. I don't really catch that which numbers on the years and percentages Maija is talking about here.
Okay, at this point I'll take the microphone. I sort of got lost with your, I'm meaning the numbers that our agreement with the ministry, which is looking for the 4-year implementation of the thesis. You had 2014, 2019. I didn't quite catch the numbers. I mean, I would really like to have them correctly, because I'm going to be talking about doctoral training on Friday to our faculty people. So can you go back to that slide? I sort of got lost at that very important point.
Okay, I will show, and I apologize for my typo there.
Yeah, that's a typo, but just to make sure.
So this should be 2024.
24, but other numbers are correct, okay?
Other numbers are correct, yeah. So
okay.
The 2019 number is our present level, and our target levels are 30% within 2 years and 50% in 4 years. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I have one question, or actually two questions. Firstly, does the target time indicator, does it apply to full-time PhD researchers only, or does it count to part-time, or is it somehow taking into consideration that they are part-time students as well?
We haven't really discussed this much in very details. It's quite a recent thing that we have applied this to our money allocation model. The exact content of the indicator should be discussed, really.
Okay. And then we were talking about mobility already, and there's also some discussion in the chat. Are there some concrete actions how we could increase the mobility? It's a difficult question.
It's a difficult question. I'm not the right person to answer that.
So can I kind of ask, do you want to increase the mobility after PhD or in between, during a PhD? So that's a totally different question, whether you want people get international during a PhD, which is good for your career in general, but doesn't count towards, for example, Academy of Finland regulations, because they count only mobility after PhD. after the certain date your certificate is issued, and they are actually quite strict with the dates.
Okay, my thoughts here are or my concern is the Academy of Finland rules, really. So I'm sort of concerned of the career development of young researchers, and so my thinking is in the academy rules, really.
So the academy rules are basically that you need to, after graduating a PhD in Oulu, you need to go out of Oulu or come back, but have a half a year, 6 months
Yes.
after gaining your PhD. And that counts from the date your certificate is issued. But this is kind of like different thing, because then we are discussing about the postdocs, and then we are discussing about, and I don't understand how that even relates to the time of you're doing a PhD, because everybody's situation is different, and you can't say that 4 years is like a magical number of years you should be. For example, if you are aiming for the high level venues for publication, the review time can be a year. And whenever you have like you need 3 or 4 papers for publications for PhD anyway, and you need to wait for those years to get the publications out. And if you have like a strict deadline of 4 years, so it's possible that some PhD student who is very qualified doesn't fit this 4-year criteria only because the review times are so long. And that's something we cannot affect. And there are a lot of situations why someone could go over 4 years, for example. So I don't really understand that saying that this increases mobility. I don't believe it by myself. So just because things are so different. And the easiest way to get the people to gain the mobility is to tell them in the very first year of PhD that after you have graduated, you are supposed to go. This is the easiest way to say, okay, we are funding you only before your graduation, not after, to take your postdoc somewhere else. This is the easiest way, but saying that you should do your PhD in 4 years is quite artificial.
Yes.
Can I comment that? I can relate to your points very easily, and my point here is that an individual PhD student should not follow these sort of ministry regulations and academy regulations. Each has his or her own sort of life situation, and he or she should follow that, and not these sort of general rules. It's just a system level management should take care that this smooth progress of doctoral studies is possible, and there are no hindrances on the way. So that's my point here. Sirpa has a comment in the chat that Finnish institutions do count as mobility by the Academy of Finland. Thank you for this piece of information.
Okay, I think we can continue these discussions in the Padlets and in the small groups, and it would be really important that you sort of take a note and write those issues in the Padlets, so we get these different perspectives. And as you notice in the chat, we are at the university, we have so many different fields of sciences that we can't have just one way of doing the PhD because of the differences. But now we need to move on with our schedule, and go ahead.
All right.
Yes.
I suppose you all hear me because you heard Riikka as well. But okay, sorry for being a little bit late. I was having trouble connecting, so I had to dash into Tellus to participate. And thanks a lot for having the opportunity to talk at the doctoral studies section. I've heard a lot of good things about you guys. I've heard that you are a force to be reckoned with, and you have very deep knowledge of and first-hand information of the issues regarding doctoral studies. And obviously, I just heard some comments that verify that in a very profound way, which is really, really good. And I definitely want to get into that discussion, since I'm a new person in my job as the vice rector of education. I've been in my role now since mid-July, and it's been getting super busy in the last 2-3 months to get acquainted with everybody and get started in my job. As my background, I did my master's in Helsinki University of Technology, which is obviously Aalto today, and I did my PhD in Tampere, because I didn't really get along with my professor in Aalto at that time. To be very honest, it was really difficult to get the communication going there, and I did have my troubles with the changing professors in Tampere as well. My the period of actually reviewing my PhD took about 3 years, which must be a Finnish record at that, and there were some difficulties. But anyway, I got there at the end. I was doing my PhD as sort of an addition to my job at VTT as a researcher. Obviously, I got my research data from my research projects at VTT, but doing the studies and also the dissertation itself took some work on top of that. As I said, I apologized that I got in late. I was supposed to open a little bit this session, and Pertti sort of stole the show away with the numbers and facts, which was actually really great. I have to steal his slides as well, because I need those too. I need those for communicating the targets as well. But however, I'm really fascinated to hear more of the issues and challenges and opportunities that we have regarding the doctoral studies. Since I've been here, I've learned that Oulu has come really a long way in this respect, improving the processes, improving situations that have to do with studying, but there is still a lot of things to do and ways to go in improving things. And you heard Pertti's presentation about the targets, and my keyword is really streamlining the processes of the studies. Time to graduation, we sort of covered that area already, but when we look at the numbers of degrees per year, obviously we would like to see an increase in that. Pertti talked about the average, but if we count in how it looks right now, I think we ought to be heading to something that's over 200 degrees in year 24. Of course, it's when I look at how the division of work and the processes are organized within the university, I really get a little bit confused. To be very honest, it's the role of UniOGS is to support things and processes, and the responsibility of the actual results is within the faculties and their units. And is that really incentivized right? Is it really going so that people feel like it's worthwhile putting an effort in producing PhDs, and how is this sort of work rewarded for students, for faculties, for teachers? Is it really working as it should? Is it supporting the motivation to improve supervision of PhDs? That's something I'd like to hear more about. And does the structure really give a clear outline of what are the authorities and responsibilities of supervisors and then the research that's attached to the studies. Obviously, PhD students are a big part of the research agenda as well. But how do we take care of the fact that we need to have the degrees as well as fast as possible? Because it's you know, it's, to me, it's a license to do research, and the faster you get the license, the more research and better research you do, and that's, we should be all aiming for that, and not just, you know, pushing work on the agendas of students so that they could be used as cheaper labor, and that's not really what anyone should be wanting. Of course, there are a lot of things that we should be thinking of when we look at the requirements altogether for courses. Is there some unification we can do on university level? Obviously, the faculties and the programs are very different, so a cookie cutter approach doesn't work, obviously, but still fairness is something that we can always discuss and improve. And of course, for the degrees themselves, you know, do we publish? How, when you submit a paper, it takes time when it's being published somewhere. Do those, how do you count the numbers or the quality of the papers where you actually publish? Do those, you know, contribute more or less? What's fair? How do we balance that? Those are things that I think need to be looked at and definitely discussed, and I hope that those can be sort of elements where we talk about the streamlining as well, and look at the processes themselves. The biggest thing, however, is that you PhDs and those who study, can we enhance the feeling of community, and the sense that you are all doing it together. You should be sharing experiences, supporting one another, getting support from the organization and the supervisors, tutors, and how that works. And you get a sense that, well, I'm a part of something that's not only, of course, PhD is very much an independent effort, but sharing the experiences with others, I think it has to count in our ways when we look at how to improve. And that I would like to emphasize a lot. But other than that, I think Pertti already went, as I said, into a lot of details, and definitely I very much like to hear more in various venues on how to go and improve this process, because I think it's really in the core of our university, and it's maybe the numbers of PhDs aren't as big as bachelors or masters, but it's really what counts. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's nice to hear this. Do we have questions now?
I think there is, should we push students to do more monographs then?
Well, I'm not in favor of doing monographs myself, because the publications are, of course, sort of also they produce points a lot, and I think if I did a monograph myself, I think it was kind of an old-fashioned way to go, and I'd be in favor of doing publications. But how many, in which sort of what counts in as a proof of doing, so that you can show that this is really a part of an academic work, that's something I would like to discuss a little bit more in detail, and unify the approaches so that it's fair to everybody.
Hello, I have one comment. If I can, I'm Mariana, I'm a doctoral researcher, and during these years when I have been doing my doctoral research, I have had the opportunity to be in contact with different researchers from different faculties at the university. And I know there are several factors affecting the time when people complete their PhDs. But I would like to pay your attention to one big factor which affects the PhD process, which is the funding. Mm-hmm. Some of the people assume that all doctoral researchers, or many of them, have funding, but when you get more in depth and talk to more and more people, you see that this is a big problem. There are many researchers who work with grants. There are many researchers who don't have any grants and just work basically for free. There are many of them who do job outside of the university, and it can be different types of works, working in restaurants or doing some other kind of part-time job, anything which would provide them with some money to finance their studies and research. So, for example, the publishing time, which is like long publishing times, we mostly can't affect, we can't like regulate it in any way or push the editors to do things faster. But the funding is something which university can affect, and that's something which has big influence on how the person's work continues. It's basically some simple maths. If a person needs to spend, let's say, 8 hours on doing something else, and then afterwards being tired doing the PhD in addition to that, or if a person needs to spend half of his or her day on applying to a grant, and then only the other half spending on actual research work, then we can just calculate how much more time it would take to this person to finalize the PhD than if they would have actual funding for, let's say, 4 years. So I think this is something which the university administration can pay attention to, and this is something that if improved the situation, it would affect the time when the doctoral researchers would finalize their PhD.
Yeah, that is very true, and so far, I think the university does offer funding and sort of full-time jobs for doing your PhD for how many researchers is that? About less than 100, I think.
I don't remember the numbers.
Yeah, and that comes out of the research budget, and it doesn't come out of the budget of education, because frankly there is no money for that, and it's kind of difficult to allocate funding from that end of the spectrum. But obviously finding relevant research projects to what you want to do your PhD on is really the key thing, of course, and then trying to figure out how the funding can contribute. Of course, there are ways of finding better sort of mechanisms for scholarships. There's internationalization money that's coming in the next couple of years, or actually I think already next year. Government is adding a little bit, which allows us to have what they call the Finland scholarship, and that might be an alleviation for that. But to be very honest, the funding problem doesn't disappear in the very near future. It's going to be there. There's not going to be enough money for all the PhD students, I'm afraid, at this rate, no matter how much or what you do at the moment, and that's the reality of the thing. But of course, we try to do what we can.
Yeah, thank you. And one more comment. So if that's the reality and if it's not going to change, then maybe it's good also for the university administration and the ministry to at least recognize this problem, that okay, we could try doing this and that, we could try making let's say the content of courses better, which would support the PhD students. But if there is this major huge thing which would still continue troubling the PhD students and pushing them back from finishing things faster, then also the expectations are not realistic.
Yeah. That's a fair statement. I have to say that, yeah.
Yes, it's a very complicated question.
It is a complicated question, and there's no simple answer for it, and the equation is what it is.
And we've also taken that up in our Padlet. So again, make mental notes and let's continue discussions later on. Now, I would like to thank you, Vice Rector, for coming here.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It was sorry for for the hassle with the connection, but next time I'll try to do better. Yeah.
Okay,
thanks.
so thank you.
Yeah.
And we will continue our program with.
I'll try and follow the Padlets.
Yeah.
So. Okay. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Next up, we have Jouko Miettunen, Justin from UniOGS. Suppose you are ready to get on with your presentation.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
It's on the presenter's mode.
Ah, okay. I will swap these. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now. Okay, hello everyone. It's nice to see so many participants in here. And so I'm discussing generally first about UniOGS and then something about ideas about the development of doctoral training and also especially thinking about these new funding issues. So first of all, of course, UniOGS's own mission is, of course, advance and organize the doctoral training. And of course, we have own national and also international regulations. So of course, we try to follow the principles of the international doctoral training. And that's, of course, in a way, the main thing we do and try to do, of course. And regarding our mission, of course, or our vision, of course, we seek to educate doctors so that they can, when they graduate, have the skills they need. And of course, we also have this time criteria of 4 years of full-time training. And after that, they should be ready as researchers. And of course, that's something we try to do in every phase of the training also, that what we do after the training, we have a good quality doctoral education, we offer good courses, and also, which we discussed before, of course, already during the doctoral training, there's something about international activity. Of course, it doesn't have to be that you have to work abroad. Of course, it can be other type of internationalization. And that also something, of course, they are benefit also, the students benefit already during the doctoral training. And of course, after that, I guess it's much easier to take postdoc career also, postdoc visits abroad after doctoral training. And of course, what we hope that the students will get and we aim to get is, of course, good supervision and education, and the whole environment they work in is professional. And of course, we hope that after the degree, they have good possibilities to get the job they want. Of course, it can be in academy or it can be outside academy. Here are, I will just go quickly these. So these are so-called 7 principles for innovative doctoral training. And these are so-called based on these 10 Salzburg principles of the EU. And of course, it's research excellence. Of course, that's something already we discussed. Of course, it can be something related to the quality of thesis and the quality of thesis work. And of course, they should work in, students should work in a good, attractive environment and have also interdisciplinary research options. And that's something we could have more. And I will show you later on some data on career research. And of course, some kind of exposure to industry and other like employment sectors other than university also. And of course, as I mentioned, international networking is important, and transferable skills, meaning that if you learn the skills, you can, in your own PhD work, you can use the skills also in other type of settings and other types of works. And that's of course something the UniOGS will offer, this kind of training. And of course, overall, we should have good quality training, and hopefully we can, all these things are of course, regardless of how long the studies are, this is what we hope to have. And of course, it's more challenging, of course, if we limit the time these should be learned. So it's important that these are the, in a way, basis for the doctoral education. And this is what you have already heard, that of course we have these funding targets regarding number of degrees per year. Of course, this is so-called 3-year average. It's now 182 degrees. And that was some years ago, it was lower, and now it's quite high. And now, of course, it's very challenging to get this, but of course, it means that we aim to have more degrees per year so we can increase the average. And the second aim is now this 4-year time period. So we should increase, in a way, we should double the students finishing, they graduating in 4 years. And of course, that is very challenging. As Pertti mentioned, there are still some open questions, how these times should be calculated. For instance, if you are not registered for your studies for over a year or 2 or even more, does that count? Or if you are on maternity leave or other leave, does that count? How about part-time students? There are many in different fields and for different reasons. And as discussed before, it's also due to lack of funding in many cases. Regarding doctoral education and university funding, of course, we should remember publications. So I guess quite a lot of publications, scientific publications made at the university are part of doctoral theses. And that's important also regarding funding. So that's one point regarding monographs and funding. So it's not easy, although you could get the degree sooner, but of course without publications then. Of course, in some countries you could then, it's the tradition is that you will produce the publications after the monograph thesis, but of course it's different here maybe because of, for instance, your funding may end after the thesis, so it's a bit challenging to do publications after the degree. Something about supervision, of course, principal supervisor's own role in this and its important role. And regarding what supervisor doctoral candidates, when they start their thesis, of course, the idea is that they will both commit to the completed degree within a time equivalent to 4 years of full-time study. And of course, the principal supervisor is an important person because he will then try to get the resources you need, and of course, is responsible for checking your doctoral training plan, or of course your study plan also, which are of course important part regarding, for instance, the time to finish your studies. And of course, principal supervisors have enough time for the doctoral candidates. And also principal supervisors ensures that the doctoral candidate get the essential skills needed to be a PhD, and work after that also outside the academy. Here are a couple slides from the this nice book, which was done a couple of years ago. It was based on survey for doctoral students and regarding supervision. They note, for instance, the frequent supervision was related to several positive attributes, including less likely to be prolonged with doctoral studies, and of course, all the way positive things regarding frequent supervision. And often friendly and easygoing supervisors were appreciated. Of course, it may depend on the student and supervisor, of course, what type of supervision is useful. Sometimes it's not necessary that you need deadlines. Sometimes the students may handle the work better without the deadlines. So there are different type of students. And also regarding inadequate supervision, one can note, for instance, of course, this means that you have less motivation to continue studies, and of course, more, in a way, of course, it means prolonged studies also, and of course, problem also regarding overall thesis work, not only the writing part, but of course, the whole thing makes it more difficult. Here are a couple of slides from this career survey, which I mentioned. So this was about made the whole Finland, published. This was done last year, and it was based on doctoral students' answers. There was over 800 in the whole country, and over 17 in Oulu. And this was, if I remember right, doctoral students graduating, doctors graduating maybe 2015 or 16 or something like that. And here you can see the mean answers to the mean scores. These are mean scores for answer options from 1 to 6. The higher score, the better. Better was the, or more important was the skill. So here's how important are following skills at your work. Those in black means that how important it is, and in parentheses in red you can see how a doctoral training developed the skills. I have highlighted here only the skills where the doctoral training was after the skills needed at your work, and I think these are where we need to develop training. Oulu is quite similar to the whole country regarding these issues, and these include, for instance, this multidisciplinary group work, which is, I think, is quite interesting and important regarding also your working life. And also different type of organization, coordination skills, and also presentation skills are important. And here also different type of project management skills are needed at your work, and cooperation skills, supervisor leadership skills as well. Bit surprising, also resistance to stress, and also, of course, business and financial administration skills. Those are not so important, but those are which we could improve our training. Here are how these skills were, how the answers were in different universities. So the skills were regarding the importance, they were quite similar across the universities, and how well they were met. They're also quite similar. Actually, Oulu was quite good here, because we were the difference between the importance at your work and doctoral training was smallest in Oulu, so 0.5 is the difference there. In other universities, a bit higher. But these are important guidelines how to develop the training. Okay, then I have some slides here at the end, which I have done together with the Dean of the UniOGS and the coordinates of the UniOGS. So we have discussed possibilities how to develop training, especially thinking and develop the whole education, especially think about these 4 years criteria. And of course, one is this, how to motivate students and supervisors, what they benefit from getting the the degree in 4 years. I don't know, and that's of course important questions. How we can motivate students and supervisors. One is, of course, if you have a bit younger when you get the degree, of course, you may have better possibilities, for instance, for some grants, international grants, maybe, I don't know. Of course, what was already discussed is this financial support. Of course, we will, when we get funding possibilities, of course, we will give the funding to the students, and there are many calls for doctoral positions, and of course, now already also a grant call for financing studies, but these are, of course, something we don't have own funding, of course, up to university and administration if we get these kind of funding calls, and of course, that's important, as mentioned before. And of course, team support and also peer support are important regarding motivation to do studies, and also in a way we would like to have organize maybe more joint events for the students, so to meet also students from other fields. Development discussions are between supervisor and students, mostly if they are working at the university, but also we could recommend this for those who are not working. So you could discuss maybe annually or as often you want to with the supervisor regarding also general issues about, for instance, career planning and things like that. So motivating for the whole process. Of course, career planning is important regarding motivation also. And regarding funding, of course, increasing also postdoc funding is important, because that's something motivate the student to get the degree to be able to also fund research career after PhD. As you know, not everyone end to work at the university after PhD. Mentor program, something we could develop more, and especially I think students coming from abroad, I think it's important that from the beginning, from their studies, that they have some kind of support. Maybe a mentor, like for one group of students, would be something. I think that would be quite nice development for this kind of thing. And all ideas here are, of course, are welcome to these. Regarding generally studies, one interesting idea is that should we require a more detailed study plan from the beginning? There are two things here, of course, which are important. That means that, of course, that's done before you get accepted to UniOGS, it means that, of course, you already done some of the work. But it can be also important for supervisor when selecting the student, that they can see that, also for the student, that if he or she is able to do this kind of study plan, detailed study plan, and how well that works. And after that, of course, you may not start the studies at all if you think that it sounds difficult or is difficult from the beginning. But that's something we can discuss, and of course that means that there should be some changes in the systems. Of course, there are some study credits the students have to take, and there are differences between different doctoral programs. In some you need more and some less, and of course maybe more unified requirements are needed. I don't know, it can be a bit difficult. Some of the fields have more like a national criteria for the credits. So it's not only within university you have to compare, it's also within for instance, within the country. Regarding courses, what are important for finishing the PhD on time, I don't know, maybe more about how to write grant applications, generally about writing skills, if that's the problem. We have organized training for this, but maybe more is needed. Follow-ups have been here for some time, and follow-up groups, and I think those are important, and many students benefit from those. But do all need those? Do all benefit? That's something also we have to consider. Does that take more time than benefit for some students? And doctoral thesis was already discussed. Is it monograph or article based? Of course, it's very field specific, and there are many things here. Monograph would be likely to be faster, but of course, article based has own issues. Of course, it's good for, of course, the student to get papers in many fields, but getting papers may take time to get accepted. So here is about, I think field specific criteria is needed for how many papers per thesis and so on. Also about digitalization, something about, of course, we are now moving towards electronic thesis, I hope at some time, so it may faster things a bit. Of course, if there's still this paper version, and I think it stays if the students want to print the paper versions also. Of course, online meetings are, and of course, online training also is important. It may benefit for students. It's much easier to get the trainings, much easier to meet the follow-up groups, and also, of course, organizing meetings with supervisors is easy with online meetings. We have now a new email list for supervisors, and that's important because we haven't had information about who are supervising the thesis. Of course, we know the names, but we haven't had any official list. And I think this is important because now we can also email the supervisors together and give them information they may give them to the students. And we need this kind of information regarding all the phases of doctoral studies, about supervision, but also, of course, courses and follow-up group meetings and different phases, to be able to better predict doctoral degrees. And that's, of course, we need to target, for instance, maybe funding or resources for specific things. And this is my last slide about, of course, about supervision. Supervisors are an important role, of course, in this process, getting in the degrees in 4 years. And of course, as I mentioned, selecting students is one part. But of course, regarding project planning in all, should be planned so that it's not 4 year for work. It should be done within 4 years, so maybe 3.5 years of work. And of course, selecting publication form can be something which is important regarding time, what it takes. It can take a year or two, one paper in one journal. And of course, you should maybe aim high, but of course it's not too high, so you can get the publications on time and work, and maybe you have then time to do more publications, even better publications after your PhD. There's in the bottom of this page, there's this Finnish Advisory Board of Research Integrity PDF file. You can find this from internet. It's they mention here about this supervision that the select publication form is at the end is the student's decision. So it's important that the student has the final word here. Of course, student may also want to have very, very high impact papers. And of course, we have started supervisor training. So University Pedagogics has now have organized a 2-credit training for supervisors, and this is very important that we have this kind of official training also for them. And now, as a new recommendations, we recommend having 2 supervisors for students, and can be up to 3. So of course it can be still 1, but recommendations that there will be at least 2 supervisors. And this is important, I think, because I think it's better for the students that you can have support from several sources. Of course, in different fields, it may be difficult that you may not have 2 supervisors. And also we checked how many students the supervisor have. So currently, if there is already 10 students per principal supervisor, we'll ask why this is and how is this, if the supervisor is able to handle more students. I think these were my slides, and of course I don't see the comments, but I guess there are some, and I'm happy to discuss with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jouko, very much. This was really interesting talk as well. And you can see there are many things in the chat going on. However, I'm afraid to say that we are already 15 minutes late in our program. So perhaps we could have Maisa Niemelä's speech as a commentary from the PhD researchers, because she will present the questionnaire that was sent earlier this autumn. So from that talk, we would be able to hear the point of view from the PhD researchers.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so I'll try to share my screen. Will you see it on the presentation mode now?
We can see the presentation, yes.
Yes. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maisa Niemelä. I'm working as a UniOGS coordinator, and I will tell you briefly about key findings of a survey to doctoral researchers we conducted this autumn. So, the survey went to all doctoral researchers in University of Oulu this September. It was quite wide. We had 73 questions. Totally, we got almost 400 answers. So I'd like to thank you all who responded to this survey. First, briefly about demographics. There were almost 60% of those who answered were women. Overall median age was 34. We got a total of 32 different nationalities who answered. Roughly 40% had worked with their doctoral research less than 1 full year while the time of replying. And here in the figure, you'll see that we got nicely respondents from all the doctoral programs. So our university has four doctoral programs. We had questions about working time and funding, which came up in previous presentations as well. A little more than half of doctoral researchers are working full-time with the doctoral research. Those who work part-time usually work approximately 30% of their full working time. Then based on questions about study right year when it was granted and an approximate graduation time, full-time researchers evaluated that their study time would be 4 years, and part-time researchers that it would be 5 years. Then in the figure there are respondents by funding category. So a little more than half are employed by our university, 10% are employed elsewhere, roughly 1/3 are working with a grant, so either personal or grant for the research group. 1/5 doesn't have any funding at the moment, which is of course alarming. Overall, 70% were happy with their funding situation. Then progress of doctoral research. So we had a question that how has the research progressed, and 3% only answered that it has progressed faster than original schedule or faster than the original plan they had. Almost 40% said that as planned, so according to the original schedule. However, almost 60% answered that the research has progressed slower. And we asked also about factors slowing down, and most significant ones were working at the same time in another job. Publishing research results can be difficult, or it takes a long time. and then other challenges in research work. Then most significant factors which were promoting the progress were interesting field of research, sufficient support and supervision, and strong motivation. We also asked something about doctoral studies. Almost all researchers who responded had participated to some courses organized by our graduate school and or doctoral programs, and we asked the researchers to evaluate the quality of courses and the usefulness of them. And most popular answers were that the quality of courses was rather good in a scale to poor to very good, and that part of the courses have been useful. There was also course wishes, so researchers wished for methodology and statistics courses, advanced level field-specific courses, and then about writing and presentation skills. Then a few words about supervision. It was nice to see that almost 80% answered that they had received enough supervision and guidance from their supervisors. However, quite many still wished for to get more supervision. For example, guidance in research work, encouragement, and guidance for writing.